Weapons of mass destruction or box office bomb? Let's try to dive in and find out a little bit about Weapons because I saw it. These are my thoughts. Weapons is a new film, horror-esque, very bizarre, clocking in at a, unfortunately, feeling 2 hours and 8 minutes. Weapons is written and directed by Zach Cregger. Zach Cregger's most notable film contribution was the 2023-22 film Barbarians, which, if I recall correctly, wasn't particularly well received. I saw it, and aside from a couple little interesting ideas, I didn't like it. I thought it was horribly executed, and I had a lot of problems with that one. Now, I didn't necessarily know that who was involved going into watching Weapons. I saw the trailer. I thought, you know what? Sounds like another interesting premise of a horror film that may or may not be executed properly, so I decided to find out. The premise of Weapons, as quoted by the Internet Movie Database, when all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. Now, interesting side note, I didn't realize this, my sister did after we got out of our showing, that in the film, all these children who disappear, who just get up in the middle of the night, walk out their front doors, and vanish, they all did so at 2:17 in the morning. Well, I saw this on Thursday, preview day, and guess what time the first show was? 2:17. And that was the case for two of my local theaters that were both playing it, and at the time it didn't strike me as unusual, but in hindsight, it's like, when did the movie start at 2:17? It's always like on the 5-minute increments, right? I was like, okay, that's a very clever little subtle marketing ploy, I guess, as a little bit of fun. Why not? So the film mostly stars Julia Garner of Ozark and earlier this year Wolfman fame, kind of a waifish, pixie-ish, tiny little, kind of attractive, adorable, kind of very unusual look to her, but not in an unpleasing way. I thought she did a pretty fine job for the material she was given. She wasn't in the film as much as I was expecting, because as perspectives end up shifting, not right away, which was kind of bizarre because this very much is a film that starts off centered around her character who plays the teacher of the class of these children who have disappeared. So she's largely the target and focus of an entire town who suspects her of some wrongdoing. And for a good portion of the film, maybe the first half hour or 45 minutes even, the film is largely focused on her character. Imagine a bit of a twist when all of a sudden it becomes a multi-perspective tale, one that loops back, telling the same period of time events through various characters who have already semi been introduced, mostly through the movie. That was a very strange perspective shift, and it was a little disconcerting at first. Once you get used to it, and had it started out a little bit more consistently that way, I think it would have been a better editorial choice. Not the worst thing in the world, but it really kind of brought things to a screeching halt initially for me. Josh Brolin plays one of the grieving parents whose son has been missing for a month, and he's a man who is intent on answers. He's one of the few who is actively pursuing answers on his own, in addition to this teacher who everybody is warning to stay away from the situation because she just keeps making herself look worse. He is investigating and also largely suspecting her, and to some degree irritating the local law enforcement by continuing to push for answers and investigations. You have Benedict Wong as an interesting character. He plays the school principal. His character takes an interesting shift. You have the child, the one who did not disappear, being a central focal point on a kind of a peripheral level at first. There's not a whole lot that can be said about Weapons without some spoilerific stuff, which I don't want to go into. This film largely, for the first at least 2/3, is a mystery. Let's solve this thing that happened. As the two and then later a third player get more intricately involved, things take a very sudden twist that you can't go into. You can't even go into what kind of twist it is because it takes things in a direction that you don't want to know ahead of time. Was it overall fulfilling or satisfactory? I'd say about 80%. I had some issues with the third act. I really did. There were a couple of things that probably shouldn't have been able to happen that did. I would say, almost largely made up for at the end when the whole complete resolution comes about, only to then be, I'd say, somewhat disappointingly undone by, I guess we'll just call it the epilogue narrative choice. So you go on this kind of a roller coaster of highs and lows for the third act of the finale. And at the end of the day, you're wondering, is this the conclusion I would have liked to see? Now, granted, it's a movie. It's an artistic choice. What we as an audience, or me or you individually, would want to see may not necessarily what would work best, or what would leave an audience satisfied. Who knows? Didn't go the other way. Who knows how their response would be? Do we want every movie to be a happily ever after? Do we want a movie to end with conclusions? Or do we want a movie to end with questions? Or do we want a movie that ends in a way that is like a complete down note? I'm not saying which one of those it is. But I think we've all seen movies that have those particular endings, and how we get responded to them varies. Your mileage is going to vary, right? Some of us have one perspective we like, ones have others. Whether you as an individual audience member can accept this particular choice, that remains to be seen. That's entirely up to you. Like I said, I was probably about 80% satisfied overall with the film and its conclusion. I thought Josh Brolin did a great job. I thought Julia Garner was great in her particular role. It seemed to me like, and this could be completely wrong, but it seemed ultimately to me that Josh Brolin, who wasn't supposed to be the main character, actually got the meatier parts of it, and maybe even more screen time, although I'm not 100% confident of that. This is one of those movies where watching it, you'll be like, oh, crap, oh my God, whoa, no, you know what I mean? One of those where those things just keep coming up and slapping you in the face toward, like, the halfway point forward after that, you know? Would I recommend Weapons as a curiosity? Yes, by all means. I won't give it a full endorsement, but I think as an experience film, it's definitely one worth having. So, have you seen Weapons? If so, what did you think? Bird Box. Are you going to see Weapons? Bird Box. Let me know your thoughts, opinions, questions, all the good stuff. Word box below. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you next time.